Hi Copic and the Craft Room fans, it is Michelle Houghton here bringing you another piece of our video from the Concord and 9th Geodes stamps, and I did the larger kind of egg-shaped geode last week, and then this week I'm doing the smaller heart one. And at the end of this particular video, you'll see cards that I made out of both of them. So I am again using a reference image off my phone, and I'm doing a little no-line coloring. Today I'm using a group of RVs and then some of those E7s and an E5 again for kind of that outer shell piece of the geode. I have my phone with my image kind of sitting next to me. You'll see it kind of flash in and off in the corner. I'm also reserving some BVs, that series of 2.0 and 2.3 in my colorless blender. And a lot of times I keep those on hand just in case for shadows and adding depth. I don't know if I'll use it on this particular one, but they are there just in case. So I am going to start with my RVs, and I'm starting with an RV 000 and basing a lot of that rock. Now notice I'm doing a bigger, broader area, and I am using the chisel or the broad nib to start this out. And with this base coat again, I am not trying to get even color. A lot of times I'm trying to get a nice smooth, even coverage. And in this case, because I know I would like this to look more like the rock and lumpy and bumpy, I am not trying for that even coverage. The RV91 is actually going to come in toward the center of the rock, the geode, and it's coming, so I didn't get all the way in with that 000. You're going to notice that this RV91, because of that 9 in that saturation position on that number, it has a lot of gray added. So even though it's still a very light color, it's got a lot of gray added, and it really changes the look of that color. So I've got that lighter pink out as I get further out toward the outer edges of the geode, and darker, or less saturated, I guess is a better term. RV93 is next, coming in and adding some of those details and edges. Because I stamped this in a very light pink, those lines are going to disappear pretty easily with these RV markers. And I'm not trying to necessarily outline this. I am trying to keep hold of those edges, but I'm definitely using kind of a scribbly stroke to break them up. And on this particular image, it definitely gets darker and deeper as you go in toward the center of the geode. So I've jumped back and forth between my RV93 and RV91 a couple times now, getting those edges and breaking up that texture. Now adding the RV95, that's going to focus in on the center of the stone where it gets the darkest. You'll also see a little bit of that RV95 at the edges of the next 1 or 2 layers out. Again, just pushing that underneath the level above it. So it's helping to add some depth to the interior of that stone. Now shifting over into those E7s, I've got an E70 to start, and I'm not filling in with this. I'm going over both kind of the interior and exterior edges of that shell around the geode, kind of that outer surface of the rock. And again, it's a very rough, scribbly stroke. It's not following exactly along those lines, although the stamp itself has kind of that bumpy finish or edge to it. They're definitely not smooth lines, but I'm kind of creating an inner and outer edge to that with that E70. Adding small touches with the E71. Again, very broken and scribbly is the best word I can describe that, in that it's kind of a wiggly or kind of back and forth movement with my hand as I'm going along some of those edges. Finish that outer edge, I'm coming back in with an E50, and I am scrubbing right down the center of that outer shell. So I'm going in between the two edges that I created with that E70. What I've really felt like when I use the E7s is that I love the tone of it. It has that little bit of a mauve or violet tinge to it, but I needed to warm it up so it looked a little bit creamier, and the E50 on top of that really did the trick. I like the way this looks, but I feel like it didn't get dark enough in the center, so I'm coming back with some E7s into the interior, that very intersection of that stone. So I started with E70, I add a little E71, and then I am going to add one more marker because I don't feel like it really gets deep enough. Doesn't push back far enough for what I'm going for, or the look I'm trying to mimic that image that I'm using. So I ran back to my desk and I grabbed the E74, which is considerably darker at this point. And I am, again, adding just some of that finishing detail to push that most inner layer further back in away from the viewer. So trying to add that next level of depth, softening that up just a hint with that RV95. I'm not trying to lighten it. I'm trying to soften some of those edges so they look less like scribbles and more like jagged edges on the stone, and adding a little bit of added depth to that next layer out with that RV95, and then same process of softening that just a hair. So I'm pretty pleased with this. I got pretty close to that stone. I could probably go even darker. The other thing I'm going to try as I put these onto cards is probably adding a little bit of sheen, because there's so much shine going on those crystals. So we'll see how that works. And then I am going to add a background onto this one as well, since I'm going to include that sentiment on there. So these are the cards I ended up with. Again, you can see there's quite a bit of shine on the one, and I added small bits of shine on last week's geode as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure to stop by scrapweaver.com when you have a chance, and have a happy, colorful day.